There was a debate on Tuesday, and I hear on the internets that white women were especially excited by it. And since we are white women, we thought we'd talk about it. It's like, are you ready? Are you so excited? Taylor Swift has given her endorsement. So clearly, we white women need to figure out what's up. Welcome to the Mosaic Arc. Are you excited? Oh, I'm excited. We had a woman in the debate. Aren't you just over the moon? She's thinking.
Sorry, I was channeling. I was channeling Harris. Sorry.
Okay. We need to. One. No, what I noticed is I really need a manicure. Right? Could you see her fingernails the whole time? They were so gestury and.
I couldn't. I mean, the bling of the rings and the pearls and the listening. I mean, earrings. Just dazzled me. I didn't notice the manicure.
I thought the bling was very tasteful. I mean, this little pin, this gold pin of our flag. I think it was our flag, right? It was all gold, right? You said it was not red, white, and
Yes,
blue. It was simply pure gold, right?
it was gold. Yes, it was gold. Golden pearls, and rings on each finger, and perfectly her mocha skin perfectly framed in white, and a sensible dark suit behind it, and she looked very put
I
together.
thought she looked great. I don't see what your problem is here. I mean, it's like her hair was very nicely it's like well, actually, if you pay a lot of money, you probably can get good hair. Do you like that? I would say I would pay.
I was
I
just
have
thinking about
had
that.
people do my hair properly occasionally, and it's actually very nice to feel like, you can
Yes,
show up on camera and it's all very perfect and gestural. And I do admit I'm jealous of her teeth. She has
jealous of
yeah,
her
she's got.
teeth. I didn't actually pay that close of
You were not
attention.
watching the right stuff. What were
I
you
wa
paying
oh,
attention to?
it's like I was listening to what she was saying or not saying, or how she was saying it or how she was not saying it, and not how she looked. I'm not one of those women that is the target demographic. I don't think I actually listen to what people say and really don't care how they look. Not that much. I mean, you shouldn't look like a slob, but I think, yeah, she was costumed very well, I would say, and
She
it's very important how women costume
she
themselves.
spoke? Are you sure? That
She spoke a lot with her hands and her
yes,
expressions,
yes.
which is why she had rings on both of her fingers in case she wanted to use her right hand or her left hand,
Oh,
both,
come on. Oh, right.
right?
Look, I mean, I appreciate the color scheme she was using, the very dark blue, right? And the white blouse and I just thought everything was perfectly put together. I think we need a visual just to prove this, right? That there she is, right? There he is, right? I mean, doing something with his mouth, right? Going right.
There he is, which is probably what the Taylor Swifties are saying
There he
when they're
is. There
watching
he is, and
this.
he's
He
he's
is.
he's in he's in a suit because guys wear suits, right? But she, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
she just looked very sort of tailored and exquisite with her No, come on, seriously. Whoever did her
No,
makeup,
really,
I mean, they must have spent hours on her makeup to make it so perfectly smooth and sculpted.
I think I think she looks like a lot of women of her age, and I think she and I are the exact same age,
No,
actually.
you're younger than she is.
I am? I thought she was 56.
Um, I think she was born in 64. I think she's closer to my age. We will have to
Oh,
look it up,
okay.
right?
All right.
Our
Well, it's not
age.
that much difference.
She's a
But
woman of our
yeah,
age for sure.
I've seen in a previous life when I wasn't, a lowly housewife and I went out to work and I met a lot of professional women and she's wearing the costume, the costume's put together well. They put thought into that. They wanted her to be able to appeal to working women, I
Mm.
think. And that's the working woman costume. It's very understated. It's very tailored, you know, especially if you go to certain cities like Washington, D.C., the women are all very tailored. Their hair is always done well like that. So she's appealing for the people who consulted with her, or she's appealing to a certain working class woman who's white collar, I think, or aspires to be.
Well, certainly aspirationally. So,
Yeah,
she's not wearing the costume that I'm familiar with from academia, right? One, I usually wear sweaters rather than jackets because jackets you
yeah,
have to get dry cleaned and stuff, and I mean, like, who has time for that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, she's dressed like an attorney. I have to say I was not an attorney. I did meet quite a few of them though, and work with some of them. She's dressed like an attorney.
As
So,
one of our comments in Telegram was for court, right? And what was funny
yeah.
was what Kilt suggested that on her sandwich press, and what I first thought when I read that here, Trump is dressed for business, right? And Harris is dressed for court. And my first thought was
Yep.
the
Perfect.
Queen's court. And I was like, no, 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 not that. The law court, right? And I'm like, but since in the United States, as we've talked about, we have no court, we just have the court. Wait, it's the same thing.
Right.
And
Right. Well, it's one of the only places in the United States, or probably anywhere in the world, really, outside of maybe Indonesia, where you haven't. It's almost an absolute monarchy type powers that a judge
mm,
has. Right. You can send somebody to jail really easily just for looking at you the wrong way. You can declare it disrespectful and
mm.
contempt right
And there they
away.
go to jail.
So, and there they go to jail until they learn to behave. Right. And they have a lot of power. I don't think people who've never been to
Mm,
court don't realize how much. I have never been to court. I know people who've worked in courts.
okay.
Um, they don't understand how much power a judge has. It's really ridiculous. Just ridiculous amount of power. It's like an absolute
In his
monarchy
court
inside
or
the
her
court,
court.
in the
In the
court, right?
courtroom.
So it's interesting that we right. It's interesting that we call it a court because I mean that maybe the words got a different um, origin, but it's yeah eerily similar to an absolute monarchy inside the court during proceedings. Yeah,
Okay, now
and there's
unfortunately
lots of
you did it.
ceremony
This
and
is
there's
your fault. Now
robes.
I'm searching the database. It's like, here we go. So we have to do I was going to be all about elegance and beauty and everything, and all you shunted me into Sherlock Holmes memory palace problem going court 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 sing. So interesting. I mean, the king holds court because he's the judge. I think actually
Right,
the
correct.
older
Yeah.
form of the idea of court is in fact legal, and then the sort of
Mm-hmm.
the kind of court that we were talking about with, say, Louis the 14th, and the get all the nobles to show up and perform, you know
Right.
etiquette, is a it's like a degradation of the justice. It ought to be about justice, but instead it becomes about performing your social standing.
Right.
So the older version, I think, is actually the truer one. I'm curious about that
And
more.
that makes sense because then they were, I mean, the king is traditionally he's at least a symbol of the law, right? If he doesn't have absolute power,
Well, he's the one. It's
he
in
can.
the Anglo-Saxon tradition, they issue laws. It's
Okay.
different from the Roman. Okay, now see, you're giving me footnotes, and I was going to be about fashion.
Sorry.
But the king in the Anglo-Saxon tradition promulgates laws, right? We have King Inny's laws, some of
Hmm.
the oldest like legal, and they're lists of his laws, and then the king having jurisdiction, being able to speak the law in a particular region, Yeah, that's an I'll have to read Frank or whoever Stinton on Anglo-Saxon law. We'll get there, all right. But I think,
The history of law is fascinating, but I'll shut up because I'll just make us go off on a tangent. So.
well, it's an interesting problem because of course she was wanting to perform in that capacity, her ability to judge
Yeah,
him for sure. But
right. Because she's projecting
she's not
authority.
been a judge, right? She's been a prosecutor.
No, she was a
Right.
prosecutor, right? And I forget what she, I want to say she was Attorney General of California, but I may be wrong
Mm.
about that. But yeah, she was a prosecutor, and yeah. Anyway, she's been to court
She's
right
performed a lot in
before, or
court, yeah.
right. She's performed a lot, and she was performing now,
Well, so
right
was
now. I
he.
mean,
I
I've
mean,
served
this
on.
is for goodness sake, this
Yeah, he
was
was, but
television. And
no, he was performed, but he is not pretending that he's not.
mm,
The what I think what she was doing was trying to project superiority. I think I kept repeatedly using the word smug and condescending, and
you
I
were
have to
not
say my
impressed with
reaction
her
when
performance. I'm sorry to
no,
hear this.
because
I kept trying to change your mind.
well, when I was serving, I served on a couple of
Mm.
juries, and I've actually, without going into detail, I've worked with attorneys before, right, on the other side of the table, and in my previous life, and it's a technique that some attorneys use when they know they haven't got anything,
Ooh, you have backstory.
right?
This is good. Okay, so
Yeah,
one that I do want to talk about this. So let me set this up a little more. That we're saying, I mean, they clearly, obviously, both had to dress for this. They were watched by millions of people, like
yeah.
millions and millions and millions of people. This was certainly a significant performance for both of them. They're both very practiced at being in public in certain fashions. I mean,
Hmm.
I've been reading, the commentariat saying that Trump, made mistakes and this, that, and the other. And there's a meme about the cat song now. So, anyway, whether he made mistakes or not,
Sorry.
we will continue to discuss. Maybe not tonight because we're
Yeah,
really thinking about her tonight.
we're thinking
Um,
about her. Yeah.
but I mean, he's practiced to being on television a lot. I never watched the Apprentice, so I'm not really clear about that. But and I mean, he's practiced obviously in negotiations, but those aren't necessarily on camera, so that's a different kind of
No, and it is different.
thing.
He was doing light performance when he was on The Apprentice. I have seen it.
Mm,
You're right. When they go into negotiations, it's probably a lot harsher than people think. I've never been in negotiations. I wasn't in business world. But what she's doing, she's also performing, but she's performing typical of what I've seen attorneys doing before.
mm.
Right? They're trying to rattle the defense, or they're trying to impress the jury with their overreactions. And that's what she was doing. She was
Okay,
overreacting a lot.
yeah, talk. I mean, so saying she's there in this. I was watching their hand gestures a lot, and people have
Hmm.
also commented on the camera angle. Right, one,
Yes.
she's much shorter than he is, which you only were allowed
Yes.
to notice when she walked over to him to shake his hand,
Hmm.
and say her name. Uh,
Yeah, that was weird.
Is that a
Did
courtroom
you
thing?
think we
Would you
didn't know who
shake
you were?
hands with the opposing attorney? Where does she get that as a clear nothing, and
No,
all
but
of
you
this
would.
is scripted in
No,
some way, right? So we're trying to
no, you would do that with the debate. I think what they were trying there, and I'm just going to take a wild guess here. I think what they were trying to do was stealthily pre-accuse him of mispronouncing her name by making sure she was heard to be pronouncing her name. So you put it into
Oh,
the head of people watching that, oh, he doesn't know how to pronounce her name, because that's what they've been trying to push over the past 2 weeks. Like it's some kind of racist thing if you say Kamala instead of Kamala, or Kamala instead of Kamala. It's yeah, so I think that's why they did that, because it looked strange. It's like, why did you give your name? Everybody knows who you are.
right.
That's that.
Yeah.
I mean, if he did it, people would think he was a doddering old fool. Like,
Yes,
just
Donald
what is he
Trump.
doing?
Donald J. Trump.
Right?
Actually,
Donald J.
since her
Trump.
what her
Right?
husband is Donald J. as well. Is that right? Or her
Oh, is that
father?
so?
No, her
Yeah,
father. Her
it's
father
her
is Donald
father.
J.
Right?
Yeah, so like
Right.
I'm Trump, not your father. No. Okay, we're not going to be
Get
able
the
to
Star Wars fans in there.
stay on course with this. All right, so he's not James Earl Jones. Mrs. Harris, I'm not your
No.
father. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so she's giving her names. and shaking hands, and at that moment you get to see their relative size, and then
Yeah.
the illusion that they made with the podia, which, okay, I don't think they're necessarily trying to be
I had no,
sneaky about that. It's
yeah,
like, so they're going to
no,
give
no,
her
I had
one
no problem with
that's this
that.
right size for her,
Yeah.
right? So that's actually,
Honestly,
make her stand on a
I mean,
box, what? You know?
when they yeah, right, when they're on TV they look like they're at the same physical
Right.
height, you know, and because optics matter, that actually helps him as well as her,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, because it doesn't make him look like some hulking monster,
Right.
going after her. I mean, their whole family's ridiculously tall, and she's my height and I'm ridiculously short. So yeah, it would have looked strange for both parties there.
Yeah, so
So
they
I don't
actually
think there was anything
leveled it
odd with
for them.
that.
Although some
Right.
people are saying they had the camera up on him and down on her, so
They
it's
did.
looking down on him
They
to make him
did.
look shorter
They
and
did
tinier,
something
and her to
right.
look more
So
imposing. I mean, what
yeah, this is ABC News doing this. They did the same thing during the Nixon and Kennedy
hmm.
debates. That's very famous. They showed Nixon in shadow, and they had Kennedy lit up more. So he looked bright and cheerful and young, and Nixon looked old and hunched over and scruffy. And because yeah, and also it has something to do with yeah, Kennedy got really good advice on what color shirt to wear because it was in black and white, right? So if you wore blue, it showed up as brighter white.
Then wearing a
So
white shirt.
he looks
Yeah.
right. You'll notice she was wearing white around here, right?
Yes.
Just as right. So that's actually to highlight her face,
Yes,
right?
her, I mean,
Because
I think they did a good job with her
no,
camera
they did.
presence,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The thing is, she wasn't you were noticing her jewelry. I didn't think she was actually wearing that much. I thought she had a ring.
Oh, I didn't think she was wearing a lot of
Yeah.
jewelry, but I think it was she was wearing strategic
Oh yeah.
jewelry is why I noticed it. But yeah, they can't mess around with the lighting because it was too obvious. But yeah, they did try that with the camera angles. They did the same thing. They were trying to make one look better than the other,
Mm-hmm.
although they had to be more subtle about it because viewers are more savvy and they would have called them out more quickly on something like that. So yeah, that's why another reason why I think the podiums being this making them look the same height was fine. That was actually fair.
Well, and they didn't, after the opening, they didn't have that many shots with showing both of them at the same time. They were usually the two
Yeah.
cameras side by side. So all of it was this side by side thing, which then was what you were, when we were watching it, were quite taken with, was all of her facial expressions. So to talk more about that as
Oh
a,
yeah.
because that is even the New York Times, thanks to the New York Times, we didn't have to like
Yes.
hunt for stills because they took some for us.
Well, that's just it. She was over the top. Either she's an incredibly bad actress or she got very bad advice on what to do.
Mm.
I mean, this may work in a jury. It's disastrous on camera, and it hurt her, in my opinion. And it's probably why Trump says, "No, we don't need to do another debate because he won this one because they flubbed that." That's in my opinion. It's like this. As I said, this is something I've seen. Well, inexperienced attorneys do,
Okay.
right? When they're trying to intimidate people, they'll overreact and they'll go, really? And laughing and just kind of got this rubber face thing going, and it's I'd like to think it's not just me noticing these things in person that it isn't working on the jury, but I'm not so sure. Maybe I'm just more sensitive to people's facial expressions and body
Mm.
language. I could just be like that naturally, but I tend to err on the side of me being more um, average, and so I think it can't have gone unnoticed in person, right? But maybe it does, and maybe that's why they tried it here because they thought people were going to be they thought it was going to help her with people, especially young women, being intimidated into wanting to be on the side of that glance instead of subject to it.
Well,
Does that make
well, I
sense?
mean that does make sense, but it's a she. I mean, she was making a lot of funny faces for sure.
Well, they were over the top,
And
overdone, ridiculous.
but the thing is, okay, she's our age, so we make funny faces. She has a fair degree of experience in this context, right? You're describing um
I don't know how much litigation experience she
Okay.
has because I haven't read about
Yeah.
that. Um, she must have had some, right? She must have. I guess I'm guessing. But
Well, she has enough to
yeah,
survive
it's
in
just
politics long enough to be on this stage in this
I think she
moment.
survived in politics for entirely different reasons we won't go into right now. But I think she was just well connected in some not nice ways. That you got her start on, and I think she's being used
Mm.
because she fits a description that they're trying to present. The Democrat Party is trying to present a particular um, they're trying to present a particular image to the rest of the country of of youth and diversity, you know, which means you got to be female, you got to be, not white. Helps if you're not a Christian, right? I don't think they even care what religion it is, as long as it's not
Yeah, I think
Christian.
that's the
They kind of
negative, right?
vacillate
Not
on that back
Christian
and
is
forth, right?
um
Right.
well, I mean, so that
No, it's not like Christian's a negative; it's that not Christian is a positive. I think
right.
if that makes sense, right? Because they will try to play up Biden's Catholicism, and only they don't do it that often because it's just so obviously ridiculously false. The things that he believes, not just the things he votes on. This isn't even a 1960s Kennedy-esque, well, that's my private belief is this, and I'm going to vote that way because the country needs this. Oh no, he's come right out and said he thought it was great. He thought China's one-child policy was
Mm.
great, or that, well, you just had to do that. That's something you had to do. People don't remember that when he made pronouncements like that 20 years ago, but he did. And for people who don't know, China's one-child policy wasn't just a suggestion; it was enforced with
Mm-hmm.
violence. So, and Biden was okay with that. That's not a Catholic thing. And so they don't try to play that up so much unless it works in their favor. And I do know Catholics for whom this has worked in their favor. They actually think he's a good Catholic and he's a very good, example of being a public Catholic. I haven't spoken to them. I'm getting this secondhand from other Catholic
Mm.
friends, but it's like I don't even know what to make of the state of their mind. The people thinking this, is it wishful thinking? Possibly, But anyway, I'm getting off topic here.
This is
She she
if
she
you all are
actually.
wondering, this is the way she was on Tuesday. I've just reactivated.
Oh gosh, I
I
was
say we
banging away
need
at that keyboard.
to the writing team. I say so. Footnote: everyone wondering about what happened to our stream last week. It's all streamed in the BasedCon archive, and we will be posting the recording if you didn't watch live.
Yeah,
But on Tuesday
it was
on
fun.
Tuesday, I was saying to the team, it's like we've got to watch this debate because it's like topical to what we're writing right now. And this was Casey
Yeah,
in the
it could
discussion.
say,
Um,
well,
but okay,
I
but
didn't
just
think we were.
to
Well,
one
anyway,
thing that you say, it's like this is useful to them because blah 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 blah. But she wasn't their first
yeah,
choice. Remember, right? It was like,
wasn't she?
well, I mean, there's those 14 million votes that Trump happened to mention. It's like Harris was not voted by anybody. She was obviously put in by the
Yes.
DNC, and it seems to me it's sort of this is one of the things that's sort of puzzling me. It's like, well, we'll see how this goes, right? But why do they think this would work when they didn't even want to promote her in the first place?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, this is central casting is called. We need a young-ish, woman of color-ish who's educated and can speak. Anyway, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. I do think they were just looking for a type. They were typecasting,
I refuse to
typecasting.
believe that she's the only one available. But anyway,
She was the only one available who wasn't Tulsi Gabbard, right? Because Tulsi Gabbard is actually, from what I could hear from her interviews that she's given, she's very well
mm,
spoken. She's very experienced. I think she is very patriotic. Probably wouldn't have voted for her because I never vote for Democrats because of the life issue, but she is very well spoken. She's not controllable. Somebody who's not well spoken, who's not as intelligent as they're trying to make everyone believe, And this might be hard for people to believe, but you can be an attorney and be smart in one area and not very well spoken and not very smart in other areas. It's possible, right? But Tulsi Gabbard was the whole package. I don't think they wanted that. I think they wanted somebody who was malleable. But they wanted somebody who met all those. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard's, she's a woman of color. She's from Hawaii. She's a veteran. She's very well spoken. She's a Hindu, so she's not a Christian. And so you would think, oh gosh, she's perfect. No, because she'd fight back. She'd have ideas of her own. Say, I think this is where the inexperience I witnessed on Kamala Harris's face comes in, right? She acts like an inexperienced attorney, trying to intimidate people.
She's been vice president for 3.5 years, which again, Trump kept pointing out too. Have been,
her job is to wait for the president to die. That doesn't really impress people much.
No, but I mean, surely she should have some practice at being in public.
She could have, but she chose not to. I mean, that interview where she was asked, I think it was 2 years ago, have you been to the border yet? She said, well, I haven't been to Europe yet either. It's like, nobody followed up with this. It's like, are they better than the Mexicans? Is this what you think? Do you want to go to Europe because
yes,
those are classy people?
Either.
You don't want to go to the border, right? You want to go to the border, that stinky border with, all the Mexican people there and all the rednecks on the other side. That's what it came across as, and nobody confronted her on it, right? The reason you haven't seen her speaking in public is because she can't.
Well, so I'm just going on, the responses that I've seen to all of this week, and there are plenty of people, including Taylor Swift, who said she did really, really well. I'm endorsing her now. Yeah. And this is following on, of course, which I had not watched, so you guys will have to watch it yourself because I have nothing on this except the title. The White Women for Harris Zoom call that happened a few weeks ago. It's something.
I thought it was White Guys for Harris.
No, there was. I was looking. I was in my extensive research after the debate, trying to figure out the title for tonight. There was a Zoom call with apparently 100,000 participants. I didn't know you could have that many on Zoom at the same time. That was White Women for Harris, which got some pushback because it was like, you won't let all women. I mean, anyway, apparently,
yeah,
Taylor Swift is not the only one. There are many women of a certain hue and heritage, I suppose. I don't know, whatever white means. That are quite taken with Harris, and they think, and I, have Facebook friends who are, I have relatives who are. It's like, this is great. It's a woman.
So what?
Isn't that enough? Your skepticism is really bothering me.
Well, you keep talking about
these things like, things she said. Who cares what she says? She's a woman.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Wait a minute.
And the man on the street interview and the woman on the street interview reveals the same thing. Right. I think it's great that a woman's going to be, it's like a prize. Right. So you have this American love for the underdog that wants to root for the underdog. And because there's never been a woman president, they want to say, there needs to be a woman president, like you're winning a major award instead of leading a country, instead of being, the person that occupies, the third, branch of government, co-equal branch of government. And it was the same thing when Obama was running, because it's great. We have a black president. It's historic. I'm like, it's going to be historically bad. What do you care what color he is? This is so dumb. Listen, he's a Marxist. Listen to him talk. But
Trump
people did the same thing then.
Saying that about Harris too, that she's a Marxist. I was
wondering,
and
he's correct.
Whether anybody cares. She's a woman. Come on. Why are you bringing up these? She wore a nice suit. She had nice, manicure and lots of fancy gestures, and
which is what they said about Obama. Yeah, he's well spoken. And what did Biden say? Biden said, yes. Oh, yes, he's clean, which is like racist as hell. But whatever, we'll just ignore that.
No, okay, look. Okay, you were saying this interesting that we like rooting for the underdog, right? And it's like, because she's a woman, she's an underdog.
People don't understand what these three branches of government do. They look at it like winning the lottery.
You think it's like,
yeah.
If she gets to be president, she gets to wear more suits.
She gets to boss people around and gets lots of money, and everybody, defers to
And
her
white
and
women
treats her
want
like a
that.
princess.
It's like you're going to have to help me here, right? Because this idea that because she's a woman and I'm a woman.
I don't think it's just white women; it's black women too.
Okay, we're taking
It's
off the
just
color
women in
problem.
general.
She's a woman
Yeah,
and I'm a woman, and therefore I should be happy that she has a possible. I mean, I should be delighted that she's vice president. Apparently, though, taking off my woman hat and putting on my other hat, she hasn't done
yeah.
anything,
Well,
including go to the
I, you
border.
know,
But I
yeah.
should be simply fundamentally delighted that because she's a woman she's going to be in power over us English speaking what's its. I don't the English speaking world is bereft of women who have had money and power.
Well, they're not. They're just bereft of women who have been, publicly in positions of authority over more people.
Like most,
There's plenty of women
the
with.
sun never. No, wait. Okay. So, I mean, this woman, she's very pretty. She's wearing this beautiful white dress, and she's got this amazing crown and scepter, and
Yeah,
exercised zero authority over anybody for the longest reign. And I think Louis the
in
14th is
British
still longer.
history. Oh, was he really?
I
Oh,
think so. I was looking up the list and such. So here we have Elizabeth, may she rest in peace, recently died. So we have a king now, right? Sexist.
yeah,
Isn't it terrible that Charles is king now? We had Elizabeth, glorious, for how long? 70 years, something
glamorous.
like that. How long was Elizabeth
Well,
queen? Longer than
1953,
longer than I've been alive. We had a queen.
right? Almost longer than my parents have been alive. Almost.
Oh,
I hope
no.
my parents were born in the 1940s. So, yeah, she's nearly been queen for their whole lives. So yeah, that was amazing.
Harris must feel really under challenged,
Underdressed.
underdressed.
Needs more bling.
Well, okay. So this is obviously Elizabeth in her coronation outfit. That
Beautiful. Yeah.
what
She was very glamorous.
she was, and she never wore. I mean, she never
beautiful.
wore pants. In formal situations, she wore dress suits, right? The one thing that really
Mhm.
threw me off on Harris's outfit, and all of these women like Pelosi and Clinton and stuff, they all wear trousers, which just seems to
Pantsuit.
the suits just look wrong, right? They're wearing these incredibly high heels, and Melania dresses better. Just saying, right?
Yeah,
Because she
she
wears
does.
the dresses,
She's
the
stunning.
tailored
And
dresses,
when she wears pants, she wears them that cut for a woman,
right.
and they're very drapey and almost like a skirt. Yeah, which is very flattering. Yeah, the pantsuit came into prominence in the 1970s. And
Jane Fonda or
it
something, right?
it was, well, it was a reaction. It was a feminist reaction against male dominance in the workplace, right?
But Elizabeth
A
was
woman
queen
wearing a
then
dress.
too, wasn't she? In the 70s?
Yeah, but not in this country,
Oh, but
right?
come on, we're all the same. Aren't we? Right? It's Elizabeth
No,
in England, queen over the Commonwealth. There wasn't an empire anymore because they dismantled it and renamed everything.
yeah,
But queen over most of the population of the world, something like that.
impressive,
Yeah. And
impressive.
and
Yeah,
so we in the English speaking world feel gypped that we don't have enough strong female characters.
well, female characters in the story of our life, huh? Yeah, Queen Elizabeth is unique. Do women who seek authority and power, do they really want to be a queen? Is that what you're
Well,
getting
what
at?
I'm getting at is we're not really like at least this, we had this one, right? There's one queen, maybe like the joke I'm making. If you guys haven't figured this out, what Casey was saying earlier, it's like we have this fantasy in the English speaking world somehow, I don't know why, that women have never had proper authority. It's like, are you kidding me? You
Yeah,
have the
that's
longest, one of
absurd.
the longest reigning monarchs ever in world history is a woman of England.
Two of them,
Oh
right?
wait, we're going to
Because
keep going,
Victoria,
right? So here we
yeah,
have,
because Victoria had an
well,
incredible
and then
reign.
it's like never, maybe we think, you've got the going now. That Elizabeth was simply a figurehead and really, really rich and may or may not have defended the church as well as she should have, something like that. Um, Victoria can't really claim Victoria wasn't powerful, right? It has a whole age named
No,
after her, the Victorian age.
cities named after her. Yeah, architectural styles named after her. Yes,
And lots and
a
lots.
famous romance attributed to her still. Her and Albert,
Okay, and
beautiful romance.
in fact presided over Britannia, as in the sun never sets on thereof. Right? It's like
Yes.
Elizabeth was an empress. Victoria was, at least after the East India Company lost. Well, after the British government took over from the East India Company in 1859. Um,
Mhm.
it seems this is like the 19th and 20th centuries is Victoria, some Georges, Elizabeth, and therefore,
Yep.
in fact, the English speaking world has been under ma'am for most of modernity.
Yes. Yeah. Back to our great grandparents' time. There have been mostly female rulers of England.
Okay, I'm really puzzled here now why women feel like they have no power as women, right? So the thing is that this is the way that the argument goes for having a woman president, right? Is like it doesn't matter who she is, doesn't matter what her policies are. We're still trying to. Casey keeps claiming that Harris said some things, right? I can't I no what's
Did she talk?
what's funny is I in thinking about what we are going to talk about, which obviously we want to make the very powerful point: white women get a grip. If you want a figurehead
Yeah.
for women's authority, you got it over and over again
Yeah.
in English history. Um, Maybe the Americans are, at odds with England for a reason. Oh dear. That I was thinking, it's like, oh, I don't really want to go through talking about the arguments that they had over who was lying and who lied which way and
No,
how
because it doesn't matter. It was
the
all about image.
oh yeah, it's exactly. It
Yeah.
literally does not make a difference.
Yep.
It
And Trump knows that, which is why he's not doing a third debate.
well, so we'll see, we still have 2 more months, right? So we'll see how the theater carries on.
Well, that maybe he changes his mind, but as of today, he said, "No, I'm not doing another one."
Yeah, because it's a rematch, and what only losers demand a
Yeah.
rematch.
Good point. Yeah. He might say.
But I have also, however, seen people in my telegram suggesting that she spoke really well, and I'm like, but what did she say? Right? Was there actually any content to what she said? And then how can people be? And then my head clouds over, and I realized there wasn't any content there.
No, it wasn't. And her voice is something else I noticed
Mm.
that she was not only acting with her face, she was acting with her voice. You're right. It didn't matter what she said. The script called for emotion and she was delivering that.
Oh
She was
yeah.
emoting. Right? Her voice got higher and whiner and pleading, many times. And I found that irritating as screeching nails on a chalkboard, but that's because I always look for the content of what somebody's saying and not the act. The act annoys me because I know that people are doing the act because they're trying to detract from what they're saying, which means that in my experience that people that have done this have been lying, which is why it annoys me. It's like it's a waste of my time, right? But that's not the way she saw it. What the way she saw it was, I'm here to perform to women. She was definitely performing for women. That kind of stuff annoys men. She's not trying to get their vote. She's trying to get the woman's vote, and she's doing it by acting like like a stereotypical boss girl.
We do have the meta question of why it doesn't work on us.
That's we're not normal.
I
It's
know,
not
and
normal.
this is the sort of
Lonely.
the puzzle that I have. It's like, okay, so it should work on us because aren't we women?
Yeah,
And
it did when I was 16. I have to say,
well,
when I was 16, those words came out of my mouth. I want to see a woman president. I didn't have any other reason other than
because she's a
right? And then
woman, right? But
right.
I mean, the fantasy being, as we've talked about in a lot of contexts, we're just gonna keep saying it, that there is, it's like a woman will what, right? Fill in the blank, right? Lift up all the other women. Why? I mean, it's like all women in England must be like over the moon, right? They've had Victoria, and then they've had Elizabeth, and
Yeah.
they must be the most empowered women on the planet, thanks to
Mm.
these incredible female rulers who have had institutions and you know, charities, and the, you know, the working, whatever Elizabeth was, she did do her job in terms of performing her role of lifting up the
She
country
did.
and its
I
spirit.
admired her for
Yes,
that.
I
Yeah.
always thought, you know, she had the dignity of ma'am and carried it.
Hmm.
Maybe,
And I see the same thing in the Princess of Wales right now, Catherine,
yeah.
too. I see the same thing in her,
So,
who's too, and she was trained by the late Queen, too.
well, then we're saying that we can see women perform their women role well, which is, I mean, I don't even have to think. I don't know a thing that Catherine has ever said. Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It
It
makes
doesn't
no
because she's
difference
performing.
whatsoever what Victoria said or what Elizabeth said. Everything is in their presence and their jewelry and
Right.
their dignity and their performance. You know, almost as if they'd said stuff, it would have been worse. Who knows?
Well, they did say stuff, but people remember how they looked and how that these women made them feel.
Yes.
And that's important. Now, Kamala is making women feel during this performance. I'm not going to call it a debate because it wasn't one. So during this performance, how was she making women feel? She was
Ooh.
making them feel superior, right? These looks, right?
Yeah.
She was making them feel in command with her hand gestures and the rings, of course. And she had this down a lot. She must have been practicing this all week. She can like, go right to the airport and get one of these jobs. I mean, it was these are things public speakers do.
Mm.
So I mean, she was sequestered for an entire week. I saw a lot of the looks that she was giving Trump were the same ones Hillary was giving Trump in 2016. So I'm pretty positive that some of those same people were coaching her.
Probably. Yeah.
But
There were also Obama
she's
gestures and intonations
yeah.
and such for
Well,
sure.
yeah, there was there. Yeah, let me be clear,
Mm-hmm.
right? She said that she only said it once. So yeah, Obama's people were involved in that too. So you could tell that she was acting. I don't think she was doing it very well because she was overacting. So she actually overacted the part. But that's why she was doing all of this. It was to look like she was in command of the room, to look like she was controlling Trump, and she was trying to control him, at least let people think she was controlling him with the condescending looks
Mm-hmm.
and with the head shakes, and with then that's not true. She actually snuck that through a couple times. She wasn't supposed to do it because that makes her look weak, right? And that's
That's not
part,
true.
yeah, saying that's not true, right?
Mm.
You just let them speak and then you have your turn, and that's what you do in like in a, I guess, competitive debate. That's what you do. You're not supposed to interrupt, right? So she was overacting. I don't think she did a very good job of it. This is why I said she appeared to be as some young attorneys I've met once who would overact to try to intimidate their opponents across the table,
Right.
because it's a fake it till you make it type of attitude. It's a lack of confidence, but it was the entire production on her part, and as we now know, the collusion of the her sorority sister, right, who was
Lindsay
one of the debate
Davis, right?
moderators.
One of the
Yeah,
moderators.
right. Was to make her look appealing to women who might think, if not for sexism, I could be in a position of authority over these bozos that I work with.
That's
Right.
well said.
I
Yes.
think that
That they
I think
thinking
that's what's
that
going
they
on.
want to be in the, yeah, well, in this sense,
They
I mean, I
they were in
obviously agree with
charge.
you. I don't think it works, right? If
No.
if a woman is making those sorts of faces and condescending gestures and smiling, and this when we have her the chin touch. Just too much.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was like a Saturday Night Live, like satire of a debate. It's real. It was so over the top. It was just over the top, right? So yeah, her general costume of a competent Washington D.C. attorney was perfect, spot on. I've seen women dress like this,
Mm.
right? But the way she was trying to debate was very much, I just got out of law school and this is my first job. It wasn't good.
Right. So I think you've described well the effect of women wanting to think that if she can have that sort of power over him, I could.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
women
She's
tend
yeah.
to this again, I have this like it's like handicap, right? It's like, why would they think that works? But um
I know it's I mean it made every single man watching that cringe like unbelievably, right? It probably triggered a lot of you go girls at first, but I'll bet if they were honest, they would say, yeah, as the debate wore on over 2 hours, that effect got less and less because it was so much more and more over the top.
right, but we're in a situation where despite having had 2 centuries worth of, strong female character, like the all every single, dignitary in the British government, including 007, saying ma'am to, the person with the most money, at least in the situation, and a fair
Yeah.
degree of power and respect. And it's like Americans who being who we are, both I think giggle at it and lust after it. I mean, that's sort of the desire for a king or a queen continues, even though
Hmm.
we're in
Yeah.
the context in which there is no court except
Yeah.
for the law court, and we have no sacred space except for Congress as a country, right?
Yeah. The sacredest
Everybody wants
space.
to go to England and see the Queen, and so it's like exactly there is a kind of wild, like, the United States. You were born out of rejecting this. How can you still want it?
Well, no, I'm not sure they want it so much as it's an oddity. I mean, a nice oddity,
Hmm.
not a creepy oddity, right? It's an artifact. It's living history,
No,
and
no, you're
people
you're
like to go to.
overthinking this. I think they want. I think they.
Oh, really?
No, no. I think that people think of it as an artifact. I think they think of it in this sort of mythological reality of glamour
Well, isn't
and desire. Okay, so Michelle
well, yeah. I mean,
Obama didn't know how to
the
behave
glamour's
around
real.
Elizabeth and put her arm around her, but
Did she really do that?
there was a photo, right? And she's a lot tall. She was a lot taller
Oh
than
my
the Queen, and
gosh.
she she
Yeah,
she put her arm
she's
around
a
her.
big girl. Yeah.
Um, that uh, you know, well, okay, so maybe I do respect the English to a certain degree, and therefore have reverence for the institution.
Well, I don't think they should get rid of it. I mean, I'm American. It doesn't affect me at all, but I mean, it's unique to who they are. And I do think they're a living history book, that family too. But
Well,
yeah,
I'm not quite. I think that's accurate, but I think as you don't see this woman that we're talking about in the same way that other women see her, I'm not sure most Americans, what the degree to which the
hmm.
Americans think about. Okay, so it's interesting that, how do you say her name?
Which one?
Kamala,
It's like it's like Pamela. So
Pamela,
Kamala.
Kamala. So
Yeah,
Kamala's family should have a lot of interest in these queens,
yeah, you would think so.
given that they come from the Commonwealth and were in the
Yes.
Empire, right? Wasn't her
Hmm.
grandparents lived in the Empire, because it would be before
Yes.
Indian independence.
Yeah. Yes.
So
And
Mrs.
right.
Harris,
And so
Is
did
she
her
Mrs.
the
Harris or Miss I'm so confused. Miss
she
Harris,
goes by her maiden name, so it's Miss Harris.
Miss
Yeah.
Harris, um, was her grandparents were subjects of this empress.
Yeah, on two continents, right?
Yes,
Jamaica
yes,
and India.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So she's actually more English or British than we are.
British. She's more British. No, you say no to an American British queen, people.
But see, I mean, this is I think as with the subcontinent's Indians who are taking power in the capital in London. So, right, America, do you really want a queen? Because that's what you're, if you vote for her, that's what you're getting. And the thing is, I think
Yeah.
people like Taylor Swift do. I think they actually would prefer having Queen, I can't say her name, Kamala,
Yes. Yeah.
Kamala,
Kamala. Kamala. Yeah.
Kamala,
So in
Kamala.
Indian
Anyway,
names, the emphasis
it
tends to
means
be on the last
lotus, right?
syllables.
It means flower.
Yeah.
So the British rose will have the Indian lotus, and she will be.
Except this isn't Britain or India. I
I'm
wouldn't want
trying
either.
to persuade you that we're still part of this
Sorry.
that
I'm
same
sorry.
culture. It's not working. You're too American. You rebel, you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for noticing.
We
I
get a
try.
bit cackly in our rebellious Americanisms. Um, right, but what I'm trying to suggest is that this feeling of needing a female leader carries over. I mean, if we have feminism in the Anglo-speaking world, is it not a little bit because we've had all these queens?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think the American, vision of queens comes from fairy stories and especially Disney.
I'm going to appeal
And
to
of
the
course, most
chat
of
soon
them.
if you keep resisting me in this
Well,
argument.
no, I'm not resisting you. I'm trying to understand it. So I think the American view of queens and princesses comes from Disney, which is, of course, their
Hmm.
retellings of European fairy tales, right?
Yeah,
And
and
it
not
is very
English.
attractive
Those are
because,
not English fairy
right?
tales. Yeah, they're French
No,
and German.
no, they're French and German, and I think Snow White and Rose Red is Slovenian, might be even. But yeah,
But the
so
ones
Central
they make the
Europe,
Disney princess, or like Jasmine is Arabian Nights, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Little Mermaid, you could say
So
is Danish. Anyway,
when
they're old world
so
stories for sure.
yeah, they're old world stories. They're yeah, they're fairy tales, right? And I think girls like beautiful bling and castles, and they love these old stories, and they love these movies, I think it's just a bit of romance going on. I don't think they've thought more deeply about it than that. I think it's superficial.
Right, but the way that the English speaking world thinks about women's political participation developed. I mean, we okay, so the language that we're speaking is one of the like it's the reason that we're all in the same story right now because the Indians speak British, right?
Yeah.
Because of the empire. um I'm not going to say her name, Ms. Harris. I can't say her first name correctly. My bad. And I did a lot of yoga, so I know how to say, Sanskrit prayers, in chant. The yoga, I think, okay, so like fundamentally, I think that, the reason that all the white women like her is they do too much yoga. But um didn't see that one coming,
I'm not
did
sure.
you?
I'm not sure that's
Yes,
true.
it is. Yes, it is because
I
they
think
no, I did a lot of yoga. And I'm even looking at a banner in my studio here of the chakras. So there. It's, anyway, that's a long story why I have the banner. Um, because of Victoria and because of the way the British Empire developed and instituted itself, Ms. Harris's parents and grandparents came from regions that speak English. So
mhm.
we're all part of the same sort of political situation and system. Like she's an outsider in certain terms to the American story, but she's completely an insider to the British story.
She's not entirely an outsider. Well, maybe because
She,
we steep ourselves
she
too
grew up in
much in the
Canada.
history of the East. The history of the East India Company, right? In Canada and California.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Whatever
neither one of
California
those
is,
things.
we're gonna
Yeah,
have to do with something on why we really should be looking to Spain, but that's another story right now. We're just trying to get to
yes,
the
yeah,
weirdness. I've said this back when,
yeah.
when Mr. Trump was running against Mrs. Clinton, and I did a blog post, which a lot of what we're talking about now is playing off of. It's saying he's like, women,
Hmm.
we should be ready for a female ruler, and it's like you're 500 years too late, and we're just at Victoria right now. Okay, so here we have the famous let them eat cake lady.
Oh,
That you could say that one of the functions that we have of claiming that we need female rulers comes from the revolution. And I did not find reintroduce an image from the Paris Olympics showing this
yeah.
woman beheaded. um uh,
It's, yeah.
the
Anyway,
women, no, there's strong female characters in the French Revolution story who are chopping off other strong female characters' heads,
yeah,
and claiming that women should have rights and that women should be part of the political process and such. Again, it's the sort of weirdness of, um I mean, it is true we have not had a female president in the United States, officially. Whatever Mrs.
yeah.
Wilson was doing when he was, or Mrs.
Exactly. Edith
Roosevelt,
Wilson.
it's like exactly what those first ladies were doing in their advisory capacities. But we are, in the middle of a fairly long story that includes a lot of strong female characters already. And
Yeah,
um
yeah. Except the feminists going back to I guess going back to Mary Wollstonecraft. They seem to be enamored of this idea of copying men, of women copying men and doing the exact same things men are doing.
mm,
And we can't be fully realized people unless we're doing what men do.
right.
And I think that's a lot of it. We haven't had a female president yet. It's we have to cross this threshold. And well, no, we don't, because if it truly doesn't matter if we have equal rights under the law, then it doesn't matter if we ever get a president that's a woman. Why would it matter? Are people thinking about that? No, they're not. They're thinking of the superficial. It's all about looks. It's all about Mary Wollstonecraft saying women have to have an education and they have to have careers, and they should choose whether or not they have children. And why? Because men do that. Well, yes and no, right? They have their own constraints, social constraints, but it's all about copying the men and copying the men in fashion, which is why she was wearing a pantsuit
Hmm.
instead of a dress, because she's
So she wants to be a
auditioning to
man.
be. Yes, she is auditioning to be the leader of the United States. She's not auditioning to be a queen.
Okay, which means if she becomes president, she's not a woman anymore.
Well, I think that ship has sailed. She's
Well, no,
because
this is our
because
big
just the way
problem
she's ordered her
socially.
life.
Obviously, it's we want her to prove that a woman can do it. But if I mean, the interesting twist that you just put it, if a woman can do it and she's going to be exactly the same as a man, then shouldn't make any
Yeah, she has to
difference
dress
that
like him
she's a
too.
woman. But maybe,
Right.
but then
It
there,
shouldn't make
then
a
we always
difference.
flip back to the claim of, oh, but a woman would do it better because why?
Oh, yeah. None of my presence will anybody ever say that. That's absurd. I mean, I mean, just forget all of the history and just look at the reality that an individual is going to be in this job, and no individual is more or less perfect based upon as an individual based upon whether or not they're a girl or a boy. That's
Well, no,
it.
but it erases the premise that having a woman would be better, which is usually the way it's phrased by these
It
arguments,
is. It is, and it was.
because
And
being a
yeah,
woman, she would do
yeah,
what?
yeah. They're not going to answer that question. It's just because we're better. It's like, they're going, somebody's going around, some of these YouTubers are going around, doing, like, they're doing these interviews. And I don't like this trend, by the
Mm,
way. I'll say that right now,
okay.
where they're interviewing really young women And, oh, look how stupid they are. Ha 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 ha.
Oh
Said, do you
yeah.
need men? No, we don't need men. And here's what men did. It's just dumb. They never ask a follow-up why. That would be really interesting if somebody actually
Well,
did
this would,
ask the
yes,
follow-up.
why, right? What is it you
Why?
want?
Why are women better? Why are men not needed? Why are women better? Why do you want women to be a
Right.
president?
This is
Right?
and I'm not hearing, I mean, I didn't, obviously Taylor Swift was holding her cat in the picture where she announced that she's, going to support Harris. And again, it defaults simply to, we need a strong female character. But then the
Why?
female characters are going to do
Okay.
exactly the same thing as the male characters. So,
Well, if they act true to type in history, they'll do worse.
well,
So
there you go,
you have
being
to
all
ask the follow-up
logical and
question,
everything again.
why?
So we have, I mean, we had to like control the pictures here because I was going mad about how many queens I could find. There's a lot
Yeah.
of women out there that have
They
these very
look
fancy
beautiful. They do.
regnal portraits, and so I put these two
Yeah,
together
I
because they're
know.
sisters.
Yeah, we will default every time to, oh, what's her dress look like?
Well,
That's a stereotype. That's true. I everybody wants to wear the pretty dress. Anyway, go on. Except maybe Kamala. She wants to wear the pantsuit.
The thing is, after I finished putting her next to all of these women in these dresses and saying, really, it's like the best you could do with some earrings that people are now wondering whether they were microphones or speaker
I think
phones,
they probably were.
speakers. I don't know. I was trying to think of some of the things that she said in her prosecutorial gestures and facial expressions. And I remembered middle class, which was something that she was very insistent on. She was middle class.
She said that a
She
lot.
said she was
Yeah, I should
middle
have counted. I
class,
should go back and count.
which means that she doesn't actually want to be a queen. She wants to be a bourgeois, which is sort of ironic because
Yeah,
that's what the Marxists are supposed to dislike because they hate the bourgeoisie and they want to be workers. So why didn't she say she was lower class? Wait.
because that was provably false, right?
So she's middle class. I mean, if we wanted to do an actual like policy thing about this, that there are we have read more than just about the dresses, that her grandparents in India were fairly active in things like promotion of family planning. So she's middle class
Yeah,
in those senses too, right? The town people deciding that everybody shouldn't have big families. Um,
yeah.
and her what is her with okay, but middle class, I've noticed there's a phraseology that women of a certain age, and she is our age, and I'm confused by that, but it's something I associate with women who are a bit older than we are, talk about when I was a little girl. Have you ever in your life used that phrase?
No, no, never once. It's really weird.
Isn't
It's like when I was
It's
young
like
or when I was
I hear,
younger.
but they're women
Yeah,
older than we are talk a lot about when I was a little girl.
I
I did
was
such
that
and
little
such. I
girl.
thought
Yeah,
such and such. And I'm like, and it occurred to me recently, it's like I never use that phrase. So it's like I might say
it's kind of
when I was
strange.
growing up, right?
Yeah, yeah. You're right. It's an odd turn of phrase. When I was a
When
little
I was a
girl,
little girl.
you know.
And I therefore I associate with the
Huh.
previous generation, and there's something that strikes them very, very powerfully about that as something they care about when I was a little girl. And
Okay, so that she's appealing to the boomer generation then by using
I
that. That's my guess.
whether
Now
she's
that you pointed
consciously
out,
doing it or not, but she must have to talk to them a lot. And so it
I
felt
think
to
it's
me like she was
conscious.
echoing, she was trying to use the phrases that people would hear and say, "Oh, she's middle class. Oh,
Yes.
we're middle class." And when I was a little girl,
Hmm.
single family, right? So basically her dad abandoned her,
Yeah.
which I did, and now we're getting a little more serious, right? Trump
Well, no,
Trump did
I thought he
the
tried.
next day at the 9/11 memorial.
Hmm.
He greeted her and said, you did very well last night."
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. She seemed to smile. So thank
well,
you.
she had no
Uh,
father to be telling her things like that. He is 20 years older than she is.
yeah. I thought well, maybe
Same
I've
name
got
as
this
her
wrong, but I
father,
thought
too.
her, yeah, I know. I thought her father had tried to get custody, but maybe I'm wrong
Oh,
about that.
no, that's fair enough. But in her what she said in the debate was her single mother raised her, middle class, raised by a single mother.
Yeah.
and remembered things from when she was a little girl. That's basically all I
Yeah.
can remember from the speech. And oh
Mm.
no, I can remember some other things saying we should worry about the future and not about the past, but then flipping constantly to talking about the past and things that happened 6 or 7 years ago that I was impressed
Yeah.
that the lies that they needed to use about Trump's nefariousness were so, I mean, truly so old. They couldn't come up with,
Well,
there was nothing
they were
new.
blatant because I'll tell you, people. I had these people in my life. People over the age of 70 believe them,
Mm,
and I think it's because they want to believe them, right? This is why people keep yelling, "Felon! He's a felon! He's a felon!" It's like, no, those were absolutely fraudulent prosecutions,
right.
and he's right about that. But that's not what they want to hear, because if they already didn't like him, then they had their biases confirmed, and that's all they'll hear, and that's why she was repeating it.
Okay, but this is, I mean, who wants to be a politician? The number of generations you're having to appeal to all at the same time.
And yes, exactly. So she was trying to appeal to millennials and boomers. I don't
Mm,
think she was trying to appeal to her own generation. I think she was
clearly
trying to
not
appeal to
us.
the no, she was trying to appeal to the two largest voting blocks
Mm.
there, in my opinion.
Well, so he's of the boomer generation, not he's
Yep,
not X like we are.
correct.
And
Yeah.
she's X and therefore is trying to talk
Well,
to.
we'll say she's X, but 64, you're actually the
Oh
last of the
yes, that's
boomers.
right.
But
I'm the
yeah.
oldest X you can get because I'm from 1965. Um, I cling to that border.
Like, skin of her teeth.
2 months in, I'm not a boomer, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, so yeah, so there were lots of like comfort and trigger words that she
Hmm.
was um deploying.
Hmm.
Deploy is an old and tired verb. We need to better use that she was using. Um, I mean, one of the things that I just stepping out of my provocative character for a second, it's like I've never understood the problem with women need all of these strong role models. A, because I had them growing up,
Yeah.
and B, it like never, and guys, you guys know I did not grow up in the privileged east coastal upper class, this, that, or the other. I grew up in middle America. Yes, we were, the smart kids in town, but I got teased by the other kids or something like that, but I had no inkling whatsoever until, I don't know, it was in the who knows when, that I was oppressed. I mean, just you say, "Oh, that's because you're white,"
You
and
didn't know
therefore
you
you.
were oppressed?
I didn't know I was oppressed. Clearly, I clearly
Yeah.
didn't have enough strong female characters. Having my great grandmother go to graduate, college in Arkansas in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
um, so for me, it feels like it's been this. You have to constantly reinvent the fantasy that women have no opportunities. When, as we
Yes,
keep
that's part of the
proving,
act.
at least, and this was my original point about Three Cheers for White Men back in 2015, which is now like current event again because nobody seems to be able to move out of this particular story, was ladies, we've actually had a lot of these opportunities all along. What are you talking about?
For a very long
For a very
time.
long
Yeah.
time. And the
Hmm.
English invented the empire that they did, the British, the East India Company, which then turns into the British Empire, that brings education to India and the women there and such like that. It's this. Can we please have a new script where we acknowledge the one that we're living in?
But
And because I
why?
mean,
It's
Harris
working
wants
so
us to keep saying,
well.
"Oh, we should forget about the past and go only for the future." Yeah, because you have to forget about all of this past that we're trying to show you in order to make these claims even
Yeah.
be realistically
Yeah.
plausible.
Hmm. Well, why would you flip the script if it's working for you?
Well, is it working? I mean, the young women are, we
Some
find,
people it
well,
is.
for a very small slice of the very, very privileged elites,
Hmm.
which is why we're voting for Trump. I'm looking to see whether we have a lot of people listening, and they're quietly absorbing as we're going.
A lot of people are lurking
They're
like I did.
listening. That's good. They're listening.
Oh.
Okay, so uh, there are ways in which the women's story is complicated, and the sisters that Harris is looking at here are Mary and Anne.
Hmm.
They are the reason we don't have a Catholic king, sort of.
Oh, right.
Right, because,
Yet.
well, it wasn't their fault. It was their father's fault for getting
Yeah.
syphilis. But neither of them had any children. And so these are the childless queens. Mary marries William, as in William and Mary, and they oust the parliamentarians. Whigs oust her father because he has dangerous Catholic sympathies, James II. But
Mm.
she has no children, and so her sister Anne becomes queen, and she has lots of children, but they all die. Very sad.
Oh, tragic.
I mean, it's like a dozen or something. It's horrible. She kept getting pregnant, and
Mm.
they kept losing the children, and so because when Anne dies, that she has no heir of her. That's how we end up with the Georges from the Protestant Hanoverians, because you can't have a Catholic.
Mm.
Um,
So that's the point at which the English monarchy became German.
ish, more so than it was.
Ish.
I mean, that's the thing, that all of these families tended to marry each other in the first place, right? How Habsburg are they at which point, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, these are I don't know. I didn't even know whether to make these childless. They're not. They're childless, but it was a tragedy for both of them,
Hmm.
or living childless. So we could have had a Catholic, and I don't know. Should we go back in time one more? Here we go. This one. She had a ferret. Better than a cat. And now we're finally, if you want a strong female character, it's got to be the first Queen Elizabeth, who was in fact in charge of
Hmm.
everything while she was queen, and never got married,
Hmm.
and therefore had no children, and therefore we end up with the 17th century, which is why we have America, because uh well, we're gonna have to do a special episode simply on the 17th century and the English Civil War, but too long to explain now. That's why all of the different waves of colonists ends up in the United States rebelling against the monarchy, because
Yeah.
Elizabeth
The
had
day
no
the universe
children.
changed.
And or no, wait.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, we have these ladies.
Well,
Maybe
maybe.
having no children is not the best choice. Harris has none. Okay, so
Hmm.
she's not going to be able to like hand her presidency, if she gets it, onto her daughter, because she doesn't have any daughters. She just has stepdaughter.
True.
We've lost the plot here now, right?
I was just thinking we don't inherit we don't pass on the office of president. It's not inherited
Well, and
unless you're an Adams or a Bush.
we definitely have powerful families in our story, and
Hmm.
that's what the Bushes have been in power for a long time.
Over 100 years. Yeah,
Wow.
in one capacity or another. Um, yeah, in Congress and in the executive office. Yeah.
Maybe the problem isn't having women, it's just having somebody outside of these families.
Maybe it's Yale. Bushes were Yaleys, right? So is Vance. So is Ramaswamy.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mm.
Something going on with that Skull and Bone Society, eh?
Oh yes, we've read theories about that for sure. Right, Yale is where they go to learn their dark arts. Clearly, well, I mean, it's a little like Oxford, that the politicians come from Oxford and the scientists come from Cambridge, I guess.
Hmm.
But I mean, that it makes sense of why people were upset about the moderator, the ABC moderator, being a sorority sister. Um,
Yeah, because we know what that means. You know, and anybody who's known anybody in a sorority knows that they're biased towards their own. That's part of the benefits of belonging to a sorority or a fraternity. You help each other.
is this the secret to the why we want a woman? Is it just we want a sorority sister?
Hmm. The sisterhood of the Mutual Admiration Society.
No, maybe it's actually that simple, right? when they're always talking about the sisterhood, because like how many of us love, oh wait, we shouldn't talk about that way online. We love our sisters very much, but sisterhood has always seemed to be a fragile and complicated thing if you're talking about families, actual families. But maybe what they mean, maybe all these suffragettes and sisters and such, although you don't have sororities until you have enough university women, so that's a
Yeah.
20th century thing. But the sisterhood is actually the club.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of
Yeah. And not
sense.
everybody's in it. Not everybody's in it, which I found out when I was in my early 20s and completely rejected feminism because I think was it the National Organization for Women or something like
Mm.
it, refused to give money to or endorse female political candidates unless they were pro-abortion. I went, what? Because their stated purpose was to help women enter into politics, get more women into politics, because that mattered. You just needed to get women in there. Oh, wait a minute, except for this, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, you're actually just a political party, right? You're not actually a sisterhood trying to promote your fellow sisters. You're just another political party.
Well, it's sisterhood rather than, motherhood. The sisterhood problem is I had a colleague in my department who did a interesting study talking about mothers and daughters in the American feminist movements over the
Mm-hmm.
generations. And
Mm-hmm.
what will happen is um the daughters will reject their mothers like over and
Hmm.
over and over again.
Interesting.
It's the generational, that whichever, you're talking about the 70s, right? Those daughters are rejecting whatever their mothers did, and their mothers had rejected whatever their mothers did, and their mothers rejected. So it's the womanness of this, it's purely at the horizontal level of the women my age. Like
Hmm.
my sisters are all just my generation, and you don't end up with the daughters supporting their mothers,
Hmm.
which is saying our
You
model
get
here is Queen Elizabeth, who had no children, and then Queen Anne
right.
and Queen Mary. Mary is as of William and Mary, right? The College of William and Mary.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Queen Victoria had a lot of children. Queen Elizabeth had children, but
She did.
the model of strong female ruler seems to be virgin
Well,
or
not
not
in the
mother.
20th century though, right? Yeah, in the 20th, yeah, the 19th and 20th century was the opposite. These, Queen Elizabeth II had a respectable sized family of
Mm,
four, right, which was considered a lot when I was growing up. It's not. It's just I think that's kind of a small family. I came from an even smaller one of three kids. But yeah, Victoria had, I don't
8 or
know how many, it
9.
was over five. Yeah, she
Yeah.
had a lot of children, and they all lived, which was unusual even for wealthy people back then. So,
Well, but
hmm.
but in the in
But
in
I
the
think,
feminist
but
movement
yeah,
itself, and Christine, I'm blanking on her name. Should bring up people's names I haven't looked up recently, because I remember things and not names attached to them necessarily. Um, that the in American history, the feminist movement has typically been the daughters rejecting whatever their mothers went through.
yeah, they're rejecting motherhood, they're rejecting homemaking for sure in the 1970s. Even the women that were doing it were complaining about having to do it and trying to find a way to get out of it and trying to get jobs
Right.
because that was the popular thing to do. So, yeah, Taylor Swift telling people to go out and vote for Harris. She's she well, the people telling her to do this or she's doing this and thinking that it could work because I mean trends have worked before to get women to do certain political things.
Oh yes,
Um,
many times. I mean, and the
yeah,
things, it's not a new story.
no,
It's a very old story,
mhm, yeah. So
particularly
yeah,
among the
Elizabeth,
bourgeoisie, the middle class.
yeah, Elizabeth the First. There were many movies made about her in the 20th and 21st century. I think Kate Blanchett was the last person to play her.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think she's seen as a bit of a feminist icon because she never married or had children.
Oh,
So I can,
absolutely.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's
And
why
and
she's
this is
resonating so much in art.
this is why from my perspective, it's again, it was sort of amusing in 2016 when everyone was saying, oh, we the I think that they were like ready for Hillary or something like that. There were various slogans that they came up with, and I was like,
Trump's rhetoric was so just better than hers. It was
right,
it's great. He counted it so perfectly.
but it was, it's like we're finally ready for a female ruler, and it's like, or
That one?
the president or
Yeah.
whatever, like female leader. I think they have to say leader, not
Yeah.
ruler, ironically. And I'm like, in English, you think that's a problem in English? Our
I know.
entire mythology is built around a female ruler.
It is.
It's the only one we have, right? It's like,
Well,
never mind.
yeah.
So the discussion of like what degree of mythology is going to continue to adhere to Churchill, as we learn more
right.
about the complexities
That's
of
getting
his character.
interesting.
But I was thinking to find out that Queen Elizabeth, after whom she's portrayed in every Renaissance fair in the country. I love Renaissance fairs.
I've never been. I want to go. I do.
All of the plays, Shakespeare's plays, are clearly written for her, even though apparently they don't. There's only one allusion to her potentially in Midsummer Night's Dream, but this Elizabethan age, this Shakespearean, right? If there's any period to which we want to go back as English speakers to our origins, the origins. Chaucer doesn't count because you can't understand what he's saying unless you translate it. But Shakespeare,
True.
right? I mean, maybe Henry, but Elizabeth, right? She's the one who had the art and the defeated the Spanish, right? And here we have not only does she have a fancy ferret, but she has her great rainbow dress that we have been meditating on for years now in Draco Chemicus, because this is the picture that they used on the cover of the Fairy Queen that I have,
Yeah.
the Penguin edition. But it's this, the magnificent, the no rainbow without the sun, and she's holding the rainbow. She's the Rainbow Queen.
She's like the fairy queen because it looks magical.
Oh, she's totally
right?
magical, and like every single, Tolkien aside, who got frustrated with the fairies and elves in Midsummer Night's Dream, but like every single fantasy story and author, they're basically defaulting to Elizabethan England and John Dee and magic and
yeah, that they got their money's worth on that propaganda. It's still working.
propaganda. No.
Yes.
No. What?
No. I mean, it's realism.
Of course it is. She was the Fairy Queen. You are really you just the prose in your soul is it. Where's the poetry, woman?
She's the Rainbow Queen, Queen of the Rainbow Girls. That's an allusion to something we read in preparation for this. Hans's
Rainbow Girls
article. Yes.
What are these Rainbow Girls you speak of?
Well, it's a fairly new organization. The Rainbow Girls is it was an organization kind of like Girl Scouts that was started by the Masons for the daughters of Masons so that they could participate in some way. And they called themselves the Rainbow Girls.
They're like proto sorority girls, is it what you're saying?
Kind of, yeah.
So they can help their sister rainbowettes in their future life. I see this is where I clearly missed out. One, all of the universities. No, wait. Okay, the university I went to, that my parents went to, my parents met at university, and it's like, guys, it's like there's some of us with terrifying lineages who I am old money, college educated woman.
Pirate.
Oh, hey, I haven't gotten to that one. But no, so Rice, where I went as an undergraduate, they voted not to have fraternities and sororities basically from the beginning of the school. So we had houses. I was in Baker College, but we didn't have fraternities and sororities. My mother, when she was there, they had women's only. They weren't co-ed in the dorms. We were, which I'm not sure that was smart, right? But they had when my mom was there, the women's house, the women's buildings were on the other side of campus, and so the guys to get there had to like travel a little bit to go, pick up their dates. so I don't have any. We didn't have sororities there, and we don't have. We do have. I guess we do have some sororities and fraternities at Chicago, but we also have a house system, and so people are they don't dominate in quite the same way as they do, say, at UCLA. I visited there,
Hmm.
and like the fraternity and sorority houses have the best real estate for sure.
Yeah, because usually they've been there for a long
Right.
time, so they got it when it was cheaper.
Right, and they have really nice houses. And so I can see that you would definitely, and I also understand from people who've been at schools that did have those Greek communities. Um
Hmm.
they do have very powerful political effects for sure.
Yes,
Incredibly
they do.
powerful.
Yeah, they do. They help each other.
Always.
Hmm.
I think we've discovered something significant here, that the sisterhood language is cloaking the fact of the sorority.
Oh,
The
could
soror
very well be.
I now I don't believe in feminism at all. I think it's just sorority sisters.
Hmm. Well, the sorority sisters of the 20th century definitely embraced feminism, right?
Right, but
They embraced the
but
ideology, so that did come
the whole
first.
point of
It's
the
basically a
sororities is
secular
not
version
to
of
let
convents.
everybody be one, right? They're very
It's
exclusive clubs.
yeah, it's a convent for secular girls, for secular women,
Ooh,
isn't it?
yes.
It's an alternative, right?
Because
You're
the Rainbow Queen's dad destroyed all the confidence.
true. I'm seeing more nodes connecting
Ding,
here.
ding, ding, ding. Hey, we did not plan this part. Um,
We did not.
so no,
Wait,
the thing
wait.
is, this is actually we're joking, but these are the kinds of things that people simply don't talk about, but that are deeply, deeply embedded in the way in which people make these kinds of alliances and political decisions. And
Yes.
if you equivocate
Yeah.
so that you're talking about sisterhood and what you mean is your sorority, ladies, fess up.
Mhm.
Because the men do it. We know the men do it. The fraternities are the ones, I mean, the Masons, right? But also just the plain old like college fraternities that
Yeah.
I mean, the you never mind whether or not you got the right degree from which institution. If you're not the right member of the right fraternity or sorority, forget it.
Yeah, I was never in that world. I wonder how powerful it still is. I assume that it was very powerful. I mean, I think the Skull and Bones Society is still pretty powerful. And people who I think you have it's a bit like a fraternity from what I've heard. You have to be asked to
Mm-hmm.
join before you join by invitation only. And it's been covered in film with hilarious results in a lot of films where they talk about Pledge Week and Rush Week, and
Right.
it's
But
really
making a
funny.
joke
But
about it is actually a good way of deflecting attention for the fact of how
yeah,
significant they are.
yeah, exactly, because they still are
Oh,
significant.
I think they're
Yeah.
hugely significant. I, I can't tell you my source, but I know I do know from personal anecdote effects of being in them or not are
Hmm.
incredibly important, and maybe not in academia so much, ironically, but definitely in business and politics.
No, I believe that. Yeah, I have no reason not to believe that. I mean, the clubhouses are still everywhere,
Right.
and they're usually in really old buildings, and they look like old established clubs because they are,
Right.
right?
But
And people still
those
use
are the
them.
kinds of alliances that um if you actually trace, so the clue, I mean, that the big mistake they made was the fact that they used a moderator from the same sorority. Now we're all paying attention.
Yeah. But are normies paying attention? We're not normal. I think we've established that. Or is everybody else paying attention to that? I think they might be. I
Maybe.
think sororities are well known enough on most campuses that people will at least notice it. What do you mean you belong to the same sorority? And then they'll think back to college or somebody they knew in college and they belonged to a sub sorority and they pledged. You pledge, you take an actual
Right.
pledge, like an oath to join this thing. So it's something people take for granted, but should we be taking that for granted?
No.
Maybe not.
And the thing is, there are ways in which I am sort of a little bit less dimly aware of this, that the one time I got, when I was on the the cultural property advisory committee, and I actually got to go to DC for it, because the previous time we'd been meeting on Zoom rather than in person, because couldn't, we were still in the Zoom time.
Right.
When we did actually go to this
The doom time.
the doom Zoom time, and there, those were smaller meetings than the 100,000 white women who showed up for the Zoom meeting with Miss Harris, or in favor of Miss Harris.
How do we know? But anyway, go on.
So no, so we were meeting in it's one of the State Department buildings, and so we're in kind of that neighborhood, and the hotel where we were staying was around the neighborhood where you're seeing the people going to work, right? And the the thing that struck me most was the younger people jogging in their early morning exercises were all wearing college sweet t-shirts and stuff.
Oh.
Saw various,
Is this around Georgetown by any chance?
Well, we were in DC, right? So
yeah, there's a lot of universities there.
No.
Yeah.
Like the University of Chicago, right? The point being that, one, I do have good report on this, because I met some of those people working there. Congress is entirely staffed by recent graduates. So
yes, it always, yeah.
It's nothing. It's giant dorm hall of interns and people.
It's a very young city.
It's a very young city. That kind of thing means, yes, if you're going to bond with, and this also makes sense to me. We need to investigate this, but I have no inroads in any of this, because I'm not in any of these organizations. The degree to which you are, dependent at that point on, for example, your sorority sisters for introductions and, references.
Oh, yes.
And I know for sure that the men are. So the women must be too.
Yeah. I would say yes. That's probably very likely.
It's a city where everything goes on who knows who.
Yes. Yes. I mean, you work on introductions and recommendations, especially recommendations there. But yeah, it would be no different, I suppose, than being in, oh gosh, what is that town in California that got completely taken over by tech about 20 years ago?
Palo Alto?
Yeah. Yeah. And that wasn't Palo Alto, but it's something like that. It was something smaller outside of San Francisco.
You're just blanking on it. So
I now without hitting a recent college. Yeah. You can throw a small stone without hitting a recent college graduate from all over,
right.
Because they were attracting people to work in that sector from everywhere. So I imagine it would be the same thing, that you got notification of these jobs and through introductions. I'm not thinking of Cupertino either. I'm thinking of something like San Jose, but
San Jose has all the tech places now. It has the Zoom building.
That might be San Jose. Yeah.
I was there for a tournament. Yeah. My hotel was right across from the building. It said Zoom on it. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a building? Zoom just exists on the internet. Hey, how does it exist in an actual building?
You need to fix this. Yeah. It's not real, is it?
No, it's online. Okay, so this is, I mean,
very young cities where you get introductions, you find out about jobs through personal contacts with people who are already in them. Yeah, it's who you know. You have to have talent too, but it's definitely who you know helps when you have so much competition, and people who are attracted to politics, who are attracted to working in consulting firms and lobbyists. Yeah, they're
exactly the kind of young and hungry. You create this in college. You are going to create this feeling of needing to belong to the sororities, and then they do the rushes, and then you're specially selected, and then I mean this is just designed to make you terrified of being kicked out, ladies.
And they also have legacies, just like inherited titles.
Ah,
right?
Yes. So this I do wonder about this, because what women are good at is power over other women.
Yes. Yeah, we are very. Some man was asking us about this at the at the conference at BaseCon last
Mm,
week, and we are trying to explain to him very quickly. Yeah, women relate to each other much differently than the way men relate to each
right.
other. The way women relate to each other, we're far more susceptible to being manipulated by opinion because
Particularly
we're
other
being
women's
terrified of
opinion.
being other women's opinion, not men's
No.
opinion, because that's easy to blow off because you just go to your sisters and say, "Do you believe what he said to me?" And they'll go, "Oh, come over here, yeah, that bastard," you know. It's real easy to do that, and we do it reflexively because we understand that they just want to feel better. It doesn't even matter what the guy said,
Right.
right? We're trying to constantly trying to make people feel better, trying to make ourselves feel better. Um, this is young women are much more susceptible to this than older women, but it never completely goes
Right.
away, right?
Yes, I
So
feel so much better
yeah,
talking with
you
you. Well, it's
yeah,
true.
me too.
Right. Yes. No. So I think
As a matter of fact,
we've
yeah.
discovered the corridors of power in the United States. It's the sorority sisters.
Yes, and that would be scary if it were only women. I have to say, as a woman, yikes. Really, you do not want this to happen.
Yeah, the men.
Trust me,
So
women.
this is what I wondered, and I was thinking about this when you were
Yeah,
talking about how she was scolding him. It's like the feeling that I was getting is like you really want you want this to be our president? She's gonna scold us
yeah,
for 4 years.
right. Yeah,
And telling us
yeah.
to
It's just
scold us for not behaving properly and not forgetting the past and looking to the future and remembering when she was a little girl. And I'm like, I'm gonna scream now because
right. This reminds me of. Don't remind me of
no,
that. Right.
I mean, it's a kind of performance that's calculated. I mean, women use it on each other for sure. They think they can
Yes.
use it on men, but the men, well, and this is, I do wonder about this because, okay, so
No, it works on them. It's
Elizabeth was weirdly enough, I mean, I guess they'd gone through a few tutors before they got to her, and her sister, the another Mary, had been politically were complicated for the Protestants. And her brother had died, right? So they kind of ran out of the family, and I do wonder how much she's
yes,
able to stay in power because they're so terrified of, next slide, um her brother-in-law, right? Philip II, against whom they launched, he launches the armada against them and they win
yes.
with the help of my ancestor. Yes, I should
It's your fault.
be really happy about this. Without Sir
You
John
look
Hawkins,
ecstatic.
we could be all speaking Spanish, or at least be Catholic. Wait.
We may all be speaking Spanish soon anyway. So
Well, see, I'm
what
trying to
comes
figure out
around
what
comes
this is a
around.
bad thing anymore because hey, her half
Yeah.
sister Mary was married to Philip. Okay, she burned 243 Protestant Catholic. Wait, yes, the Mary Tudor had 243 Protestants burned, including Latimer and some fairly highly placed um, officers in the state.
Uh,
That's bad. And
that was her
yes,
mistake.
and then Elizabeth,
They
ends
had
up
their own
having to be,
fraternity.
massively like paranoid and have Sir Francis Walsingham run his spy network and John Dee talk to angels. It was a little fraught.
Yeah, I don't actually. I'm not sure if there's a woman alive that blames her for not marrying. I think it was the only way she could maintain her own power. Um,
Well,
I don't think she did it just for England.
it's obviously complicated because all
It
of
is
all of these
complicated.
so it's interesting because like on the one hand we have an elected leader as opposed to this kind of family connected choice of leaders, and
Hmm.
this was pretty tumultuous. But then you could say our electoral process is becoming kind of tumultuous. um I think back in July
Probably
one
always
of our
was.
candidates was shot at.
Yeah,
And talk about people getting
yeah,
shot. You know how many people were killed in Mexico in their election season this past year? A lot.
a
Yeah.
lot and shot and killed. The mayors of these small towns are being shot and killed because, well, I mean, they say Trump, threatens the status quo, which is why they're engaging in pretty severe lawfare against him and his
Mm.
supporters. And he's right; it is lawfare. And I think it will be rectified. I have hope and faith that it'll be rectified one day, not that far off. But in Mexico, that means, yeah, you die. If you just become mayor, you die. You become chief of police, you die. Unless you have the right connections, you're
It's like
dead.
dozens and
Right. So
dozens this past
yeah,
spring
it's
were killed.
bad. It's bad. And somebody tried to bring it to our elections now. And I hope people are awake about that, that are very, very close neighbors just south of the border have this problem,
Yeah.
and it's a bad one, and you don't want that happening here. I don't want it happening there either. I pray for them. And I don't definitely don't want it happening here.
But
But
it's
there are
it's
plenty of people who are okay with
yeah,
that.
and the sort of game is like, oh, we're a democracy and therefore we don't end up with these problems. Like, yes, you do. Um,
We've had 3 presidents shot to death.
yeah.
Come on.
But it's like it's not a new situation for us.
It's not new.
Political
We're not even that old a
assassination is not
country.
an invention of yesterday.
Right.
Um, so well, and the thing is, it's like it's a kind of interesting, based on alt history problem of what if Elizabeth had married. Uh, I mean, what if Mary had,
Huh.
actually had a child? I mean,
Hmm.
the sort of problem of whether or not she was actually ever pregnant because she did meet Philip. It's like the King of Spain came to England and he was in fact the King of England for a bit, and they had relations presumably that suggested to her that, but she was fairly old,
Oh,
and never had a child, and then died, which is how Elizabeth became queen. Uh,
that's Mary
yeah,
Tudor.
yeah, and
Okay.
again, the interesting hypotheticals of if James II hadn't been chased off, so that his daughters, who never, were able to produce heirs, that there's a Catholic possibility there. Mary Tudor is another Catholic possibility. This whole story is so that England isn't Catholic, which is the point of the Armada too, because Philip had been king of England and, sends the Armada to claim back his throne. Yeah,
Like his throne.
anyway,
Yeah.
our grand English speaking mythology depends on uh my ancestor, Sir John Hawkins. Look him up, you'll decide which side of the story I'm on here. Um, and Drake, and there's one other admiral in the defeat of the Armada. Mean that Elizabeth in 1588 stays queen, and of course, she is you want like the strong female character. Spencer is going to be busy writing her up as warrior queen and Britomart and things like that. But before that, maybe allegedly, she gives this speech at Tilbury in 1588, which, girl boss, you can't get any better than this. My loving people. And oh, the portrait of Elizabeth that I'm showing now is her Armada portrait. I just couldn't include the whole thing
Hmm.
because I needed Miss Harris's reaction to it in the picture. Anyway, so this is Elizabeth right at about the time when they're trying to make sure that the Armada doesn't end up in a land war, which it didn't happen because the ships all sailed away. But anyway, my loving people, we have been persuaded by some that are careful of our safety to take heed how we commit ourselves to arm multitudes for fear of treachery. But I assure you, I do not desire to live to distrust my faithful and loving people. So she's shown up apparently dressed in armor-ish on a white horse
Mm.
ish.
Yes.
Apparently, there's a question of whether this ever happened, but it's in the mythology, right? So we would do this. So here she is before the troops, saying, I'm not worried about my own physical safety. I'm here to address you, troops. Let tyrants fear. I have always so behaved myself that under God I have placed my chiefest strength and safeguard in the loyal hearts and goodwill of my subjects. And therefore I am come amongst you, as you see at this time, not for my recreation and disport, but being resolved in the midst and heat of the battle to live and die amongst you all, to lay down for my God and for my kingdom and my people, my honor and my blood, even in the dust. So she's amongst the troops at Tilbury, right? I know I
Hmm.
have the body but of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too, and think foul scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm, to which rather than any dishonor shall grow by me, I myself will take up arms. I myself will be your general. Miss Harris should be like, if she gets elected, she's going to be
Yeah.
commander in chief. So pay attention.
Yeah.
Judge, I myself will be your general judge and rewarder of every one of your virtues in the field. I know already for your forwardness you have deserved rewards and crowns, and we do assure you in the word of a prince they shall be duly paid you. In the meantime, my lieutenant general shall be in my stead, than whom never prince commanded a more noble or worthy subject. Not doubting but by your obedience to my general, by your concord in the camp, and your valor in the field, we shall shortly have a famous victory over those my enemies, those enemies of my God, of my kingdom, and my people. Right? This is the English tradition, right? And I think that
Yeah. I'm a
I'm a
man.
man.
I'm a man. I'm wearing the pants. I'm wearing the armor.
Again, apparently this
Yep.
could be
I'm wearing the
apocryphal,
pantsuit.
but even if it is apocryphal, that's hilarious because it means the tradition of strong female character is literally embedded in the origins
Yep.
of our modern understanding of
Right.
all of
I'm
the
I
Anglosphere.
am a king of England
Yep.
too. I am a king of England too. This is the female, flip the script. The man was a hero, but now it's going to be a woman. We're taking the same role and putting a woman in it. Now,
1588.
Batgirl.
1588.
Yep. Batgirl, Supergirl,
Late, late
Spider
comers,
Girl. Yeah.
old news. Ms. Harris said we should not live in the past anymore. We should stop trying to live in the past.
That's where she is all the time. She her reputation, her aura depends on it. Depends on you viewing her a certain way.
Ironically, yes. And in a
Yeah,
way
because
that,
she doesn't have ideas. She just has an
as
image.
we've been trying to suggest tonight in our roundabout female way, is old news in this political
Yes.
context that we participate in. It's like that call me ma'am.
I'm not.
Call me ma'am.
I may be
I
a,
want to be called
I
ma'am.
may
Thank you
yeah.
very much.
I may be a feeble woman, right? When I was a little girl.
Yeah,
See?
yeah.
Yeah.
The contrast is necessary, and yes, I'm little
Mm-hmm.
girl, power woman.
Mm-hmm.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Yep. She's given Porsche. Yeah. All image, no substance. I would, which is something I would never say about Elizabeth I. I think she had substance. I think it was evil when she was old. Questionable, but that's questionable when she was young. I think she was a victim when she was young. But yeah,
Well, she was somewhat evil because she took all that money off of the pirates gave her, and they were
oh,
making it in bad and
oh,
evil ways.
she did way more evil things than that. But that's too much detail to go into.
Well, we can do so. I talking about busty mythologies. I'm like, I was thinking about this and saying, really. So when I was a little girl, um, I do remember. I must have been in fourth or fifth grade. I'm trying to remember. It's like I remember the library that I got this book from. Maybe I was in sixth grade. We had to do a book report, and you remember. I remember my first ever research paper was on John F. Kennedy. I got a C because I didn't have a title page or something.
Hmm.
And the next one I did the same year, I got an A on. It was on New Mexico. So there you go. Figured out you needed a title page. Um, I remember reading a book on Queen Elizabeth for a book report, and these stories, the stories we have from when we were little, stick as the
Hmm.
character of the culture that we're in. And I do confess I'm not entirely ready to have a culture that has no heroic Queen Elizabeth. It's cracking. I'm telling you, it's having grown. I just said I grew up in New Mexico, right? They have a different story
Yeah.
about what happened in 1588,
Yeah.
and
That would be all Spanish,
and
right?
I mean, what's interesting too, it's like we've mentioned this before, but it always bears to continue to say that in, Santa Fe, there are statues about, the good government that the Spanish brought. Of course, they're set up by the Hispanic families that still live there, that,
Yeah.
they've been there for almost as long as 1588. They got there in 1610 or
Yeah.
so. And the Spanish have, traditions of good government too. Not just the English. The English have spent how many 100 years is that? 500 years telling stories about the Spanish as the evil, no government people. But the Spanish also actually had fairly sophisticated government. And we may need to be paying better attention to the way these stories cross more than we think in the upcoming future.
Mm-hmm.
But the definition of us as this empire, not that one, goes back to this moment when Elizabeth appears dressed as a soldier and says, "I have the heart and stomach of a king."
Yeah.
That same year, although I think a few months before that, some of her courtiers put on a play for her about Arthur, the misfortunes of Arthur, right? And in the end, there's these paeans to Elizabeth, right? Talking about the mythology that we're having to deal with, and whose mythology is it, and which side are we on? If you're Anglophilic, well, this should rouse your soul. They get to the end of the play, which I haven't read, but I've read this bit because we were reading Francis Yates' study of Elizabeth as Astrea, as Justice, right? Justice returns to Earth through this, and here's this image that what's going to come after the fall of Arthur. And of course, the Tudors were very interested in the Arthurian story, and Spencer has that all through the Fairy Queen. Of Elizabeth is the fulfillment of the Arthurian legends. The Queen returns, not once a future king, right, but the once a future queen. And here at the end, Gorloy is saying what's going to come now that Arthur is dead. Now rest content and work no further plagues. Let future age be free from Gorloy's ghost. Let Britain henceforth bathe in endless weal. Good fortune, right? Good health, right? Let Virgo come from heaven, the glorious star, the zodiac's joy, the planet's chief delight, the hope of all the year, the ease of skies, the air's relief, the comfort of the earth. This Virgo is going to heal everything. That virtuous Virgo born for Britain's bliss, that peerless branch of Brute, that sweet remain of Priam's state, that hope of springing Troy, which time to come and many ages hence shall of all wars compound eternal peace. Let her reduce the golden age again. Religion, ease, and wealth of former world. Yea, let that Virgo come and Saturn's reign, and years oft 10 times told, expired in peace. A rule that else no realm shall ever find. A rule most rare, unheard, unseen, unread. The sole example that the world affords.
The sole example. Wow. This was a play put on for her?
In 1588.
How old was she? How old was she when that was put on for her?
In her 50s.
Was this a command performance?
No, I think I haven't read enough about it. It's this misfortunes of Arthur, and again, I skimmed the what I saw online today, because Yates quotes this passage about the zodiac's joy, the planet's chief delight, which we love for our Draco Chemicus.
Yes.
What they're doing is this whole mythology that the court develops around Elizabeth is, I think, possibly, right? There's 2 ways that this can go, right? A woman ruler is going to be better, right? They spend a lot of time in their poetizing about her, of insisting that her rule, so a woman's rule is going to be more glorious than any other rule could possibly be. I put it to you, we put it to you, that in the English speaking tradition, this has had like deep roots, right? We return constantly to a queen's rule is going to be the return of justice, right? And it's a reference from the Ovid, that in the Iron Age, justice flees from the, talk about Kamala, whatever her name is, in the court, right? She's bringing justice. She's like Astrea return. Talk about mythological.
Right. And justice is a lady holding the balancing scales, right? She's always seen as a woman, which is probably an allusion to wisdom being a woman, right? In the Old Testament. But well,
okay, there's a whole other layering of like these daughters of God and the
they're they're not trying to convince Elizabeth. They're trying to convince her subjects. They're trying to convince their enemies,
Oh yeah.
and they're working through her, and they used her completely to create and extend an empire. And this was all part of the propaganda. But you make a very interesting point. That kind of propaganda had a long legs. It's still working with us, and it still leads to a 16-year-old girl saying, "We need to have a woman president. I can't wait till we have a woman president."
Exactly.
Right? Because it's all
Why do
propaganda.
white women want hair? We're Anglo.
It works on Anglos,
It
right?
works on Anglos. It specifically
more
works on
than others
Anglos
because of that.
English
Yeah.
speakers. And it's interesting the way it's been, how it's carried over in India, I'm not sure, right? India in the 19th century has to deal with the fact of the British government, including learning English, right? That we have,
Right, it's their schooling system.
that we have English as an actual like school subject in the sense that we have it as, English, that everyone should learn English, is because of the empire in India. That they needed the civil service. Not only do the civil servants are all learning about Troy and Greece and stuff like that because they're all doing classics, from the British side, the guys going to school in England, right, Eton and stuff. But in India, they need to learn English because that's how they get government positions.
Got
right
it.
And so they get very interested in the Middle Ages in India in the 19th century.
Why is that?
Because they want the history of the language. So they subscribe to things like the Early English Text Society. It's one of these publications by subscription, and a lot of the subscriptions go through. I mean, it's like funded by India. But the Indians, the subcontinent Indians under the Raj, learn English. So if you know people from India, they speak English. Obviously.
And they always speak British English.
Yeah, they speak British
even if
English.
If they're recent immigrants, or if their parents were and they grew up, they will speak with a very distinctive British Indian type of accent. Right. It's actually delightful to listen to. It's
pretty lilting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So this is Harris's family. I mean, they have a good claim on being Anglo.
Yes, they do.
Linguistically, culturally and linguistically. Yep. And therefore, as much being heirs to this invented tradition of, yay, let that Virgo come and Saturn's reign, the return of the golden age, right? Saturn will bring the golden age. And years often times told expired in peace. So we have deep in our English tradition, this conviction.
Women bring peace.
Women bring peace.
Yeah, we're peacemakers. No, don't do it.
But if we were Catholic, I mean, this is what's interesting. So I've been haunted my entire professional career by this question of how did Queen Elizabeth replace the Virgin Mary? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, you heard it in
iconography.
Well, the sole example that the world affords, right? There's a very famous antiphon, Sola sine exemplo. Mary is the only one without example that God, favors.
Yeah. Right.
There's deep mythology going on here. And it's not just because, she's needing to defeat the Spanish. It's because, as we have, I think this image of Mary as mother is from Washington. Yes.
Walsingham?
Washington. The red
Washington.
one. The red one that you gave me. Isn't that in DC?
Oh, the red. Oh, is it in DC? Actually, I don't know where. I didn't know where the origin of that one was.
Well, I thought I
think it looks like Slavonic.
Oh, well, it looks like there's a really red Christ and.
Yes, it's very red. She's a Queen of Heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
So everything that's going on in this tradition of strong female rulers that will bring peace, the sole example that the world affords.
She did. She's sprung the Prince of Peace.
Yeah, well,
we need to change that. How can we use this to our favor? It was really diabolical what they did.
Well, and they certainly did it on purpose, right?
Yes, absolutely. Did
They're
it on purpose. It's
explicitly,
obvious.
mythologically, imaginatively replacing
Yep.
Our Lady with Elizabeth,
Mhm.
and in the poetry, and therefore in the imagination, therefore, talk about so never mind the rupture of what we're going to have to go through to rethink, the way in which the United States or the Anglo Empire has behaved over the last 80 years. This rupture completely rewrote the culture.
Yeah, it did in a bad way. Bad ways. Yeah.
Well, I obviously in ways that it's like well, so the Walsingham one, that's the next one I have. That, we have Taylor Swift, Our Lady of Walsingham. Ladies, which do you choose? Right?
Great.
Because all we should I to do this, I'd have to listen to her music or even like recognize that I may have heard her music or something. But
It's not bad. I've heard a couple of tunes on the radio,
yeah,
and one of them makes me laugh. One of the lines, I don't think it's supposed to, but I crack up every time. But I mean, it's pop music. It's meant to be easily digestible sugar.
right.
That's what it is. But yeah, it's they're not rich images, which is probably why she keeps going into like witchcraft images, because at least they're shocking,
Mm.
right? So because her music isn't deep, the performances, they have to hold interest, especially if you're going to convince people to spend $1,200 on a ticket,
But they
which is
have been, and
unheard
this is
of.
like, say,
Yes, I
maybe we
know.
should, pay a little more attention to the Swift phenomenon, because
Oh,
the
it's manufactured. I mean, the whole
oh,
tour.
so was
One of the reasons
Elizabeth.
you charge,
That's what we just
yeah,
proved.
one of the
So was
reasons.
Elizabeth manufactured.
Yeah, she was. Right. They're still doing it. Right. Wash, rinse, repeat. You charge $1,200 a ticket. The first person that pays for it, you can say, aha, see, it's worth $1,200. It's worth whatever people are willing to pay for it. But it also, promotes and sustains this idea that it's worth $1,200. So
They're
yeah.
so practical.
Sorry. I know that makes me boring, but
No, no, no. It makes you refreshing, and so I mean, the problem being, now we're in the situation where the idol that we have is Taylor Swift, right?
yeah.
I was thinking about that we've been playing with this in the poem now that we have in the market that we're writing right now, this act, that we have the Venus character dressed up and turned into a kind of singer like Taylor Swift. But then the politicians use these idols to attach themselves to, right? So they've got this manufactured Taylor Swift idol who can now point to Harris and
Yeah.
say, vote for her. To talk about sorority sisters, right?
Right. Yes. This is the sisterhood of image,
Right,
right? It's one image pointing towards another image.
right.
And we want this image of Queen Elizabeth the First, strong, powerful,
No children.
ferret slash cat lady, right?
Yep.
Who knows how to accessorize. Lots of pearls, a lot of pearls. Not only the images of her, she's always wearing very prominent pearls, and so were all of these portraits of Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
I know that has meaning. I don't remember what it is, but the pearl has a specific meaning in artwork.
Well, in the Middle Ages, it was an image of Mary and of divine.
Supplanting. Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole poem called "The Pearl," which is about heaven,
Yes.
that Tolkien
Right.
translated. Right. So this is where we
Yeah.
are. We have a culture that dethroned the mother of our Lord and has replaced it with feminine idols of a different sort.
Yeah. A strong, independent woman who is completely dependent upon men to cart all of her stuff around and put up her concerts or coach her for an entire
You're
week,
going to get scolded if you don't watch it,
provide
and
security.
grinned at, and the chin look will come to you. How dare you pretend that she's not an independent, strong female woman, completely uncrafted?
Sorry, that's my heroes.
Well, okay.
How'd I
So
do? Am I
very
ready? Am
good,
I
very
ready for
good.
my
So
close up?
we have here, um, uh, well, okay. So I should acknowledge our audience who've been coming: Mel and Rogue Wave and Robert and Northern Vibe. Everybody, good to see you guys. Um, And therefore, we hope we've made the case that we're in the same story still again, right? But that this
500 years.
500 years later,
Come
talk
on, let's do
about
something
tradition.
new.
No wonder they want us to keep forgetting it, because otherwise we might notice some patterns in the.
Yes, the noticing has
Let
begun.
let the noticing begin. That if you want this strong female character, you're still so this pairing of pictures is one that Yates pointed out in that same article. And it's interesting how standing between pillars is clearly a thing. Notice this one, they use it on stage. On the one hand, we have Charles V, who was like emperor of everything, and in this illustration, he's like chained all of the other kingdoms. And opposed to that is, of course, Elizabeth, who, by way of the Armada's victory, becomes that kind of character who has, now as woman, with the heart and stomach of a man, the power that the English desperately wanted from the Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah, she is the world. That's why her dress is so globe-like. I'm convinced.
Well, that iconography plays over and over and over again. I mean, these European rulers who are in the midst of, because of their ships, conquering these great maritime emperors. Germany doesn't, right? Germany never gets the great maritime empire, and that explains a lot about the 20th century too, because they kind of wanted in, but the British weren't going to let them. Certainly not in World War One. To play the empire game, that we are so caught up still. And if you want to know, it's like we'll go back to our two characters now. Which of these people do you actually want in charge of this role, right? The woman who wants to be it as a woman because now we need a woman because that will be a great strong female character, or the man? You can see which side we want to vote. Here, I've got the hat. Got the hat. Right.
Oh, you got it.
My gold crayon.
Awesome.
Who says, "Let me talk to them and let's stop the wars and stop the killing."
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Women will bring peace, but he's the only one actually talking about it and did it when he was president.
Interesting.
He walked across the border into North Korea and talked peace. That was astounding. No other president had ever done it. But sure, I'll vote for the woman because, girl power.
And Estrella and the golden age will return.
Yeah. The golden age of men pulling all the strings behind the scenes. But yeah, we'll go with that image thing.
Right. So we hope we've made our point now. You're under a spell. And we invite you to listen to what the people actually said, rather than the glamour of the imagery that the women have been so carefully managed to project.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe. You can subscribe on Unauthorized to help support our work and learn more, in the poetry that we're dealing with, and able to disentangle all of these mythologies. We'll have the BaseCon images, BaseCon videos up as soon as we get them from the live stream, and we'll see you next week. When hopefully we'll have I don't know, yet another mythology to deconstruct, historicize.
Yeah, I'll calm down from this one.
You were great. Come on. Girl power. The woman who actually listens to what the woman's saying rather than looking at the her fingernails.
Yeah. I honestly, I didn't notice the fingernails.
She used them well. She had the gestures, and come on, yes. Anyway, look again. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.